ARN intense version, active real nonsense, dark, dramatic lighting, dark edition. So you wrote all of this, so yeah. I don't know any of it. All right. Well, there's one here that says deep because it's a deep topic. We could start with that. So, equanimity with neutrality, bliss is the last attachment. Yeah. That is well, so what I get from it right away is, where to begin, but basically, people often might consider, if they're like new to the idea of what equanimity is, they might think, oh, it means being okay with the bad things, but actually it's harder to be okay with the good things or the things that are blissful, because it's easier to want bad things to go away versus to want good things to know that good things also naturally pass, and you can't hold on to those as being a permanent thing. You can't get attached to those either, or you can, but you'll suffer for it, right? Yeah, that's the funny part. It's like you can get attached to anything. Yeah. Good things are really easy to get attached to. And attachment is like directly, what's not correlated, equivalent? No. Some word. Attachment is suffering, like they're the same. So if you get attached to something that's like pleasant, that is so hard to not do compared to, I have pain in my hip, I don't want it there. Like the attachment is obvious. Like there's something wrong. When things are going right, then it's like, why would you think to make sure I'm equanimous? It's like you just, things are going well and you're enjoying it, and you start to get attached to that, and that's so, it, in every Buddhist tradition or practice or whatever else, they always talk about how that is the hard part, like the dangerous thing. But also, what this thing is talking, this little note here, is bliss being more as the neutral rather than the good. So, like the pleasant sensations, that's like kind of almost a elation and stuff, and like there's those two extremes there. Like something hurts or something feels good. Those, it's harder to notice that when you're attached to the good things, but it's still, they're both reactions. Yeah, like you can still notice that there's a possibility for attachment here. But when things just are neutral, you can be attached to that, and that's effectively the final thing that you can be attached to. Is like when you have eliminated all attachment to all things, then you end up being in bliss, just like this neutral state of bliss. Like that becomes the neutral state, and that this being the neutral state, like just always being in bliss, always being happy, becomes the thing to be attached to. Yeah, and then if you go out of it a little bit, then you think, oh, I've lost that thing, and then you realize you were attached to it. Mm-hmm. Or what ultimately will happen is you end up in just a neutral bliss state. When you go out of it, because you are balanced with all that stuff outside of it, and you know that this is the neutral state, you can be equanimous with going outside of it, so you don't notice the attachment that you have to it, because it's like, you end up on either side of it, and then it's like you're so balanced that you just end up back in the neutral state eventually, because that's your base state, like your natural way of being. So you keep ending up back there, but there is an attachment somewhere in there, in that layer of just like perfect neutrality and natural like balance, whatever it is, that is so subtle, because you can't get pulled out of it. Like you can't, bad things or good things happening, no matter what happens with neutrality and bliss as your base state, there's nothing that will ever poke at you enough that is like, that makes it really obvious that there's an attachment there. So how do you see it? Well, and how do you, this is deep, you wrote deep because
who's actually experiencing this? the very odd, rare person.
Yeah.
Right? And is there like you're saying there's an attachment to the neutrality? Is there just neutrality without attachment? Like that's or how? If you're saying how do you notice that there's an attachment? How do you notice when there's not an attachment either?
Well, you won't really notice that there's not an attachment because there just won't be.
Yeah.
Like attachment can't be a thing. It's the same way of like if there's something on the table that you have no attachment to. It's just like green gloves, red gloves, blue gloves. There's just like a pile of gloves here or something. It's like I have no attachment to one or the other in any way, and so it's like okay, you could add one more glove. It wouldn't really make a difference, type of thing. Like is that kind of neutrality and that kind of equanimity with what is going on, and when instead of a pile of gloves, it's literally anything.
Yeah.
Then your natural state is just I am fine and I am happy with regardless of absolutely anything. Then how do you, when nothing can actually pull you out of that state, it's what do you do to know that you have attachment to the fact that you have nothing can pull you out of the state because you're not even thinking.
Well, it sounds like almost sounds like attachment to the fact that you don't have attachment.
Yeah, which you can't know because no matter what happens, you won't have attachment to it.
But then you can actually have attachment, or you can have no attachment though.
Yeah, it that's why the.
I guess the person in that state would go, oh, now I have attachment, no attachment, and it would be like back and forth, but they wouldn't be able to recognize the difference once nothing can pull them out.
Well, there wouldn't be a difference because they're balanced with it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the.
But then I'm wondering, what's the question? Because is this a real question? Because if there's no difference, then what's the difference?
Because the attachment to neutrality of just like being at that state, there's no way to shift out of that state to know that there's an attachment to it or not.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like the last attachment. Like you can't be attached to anything except this thing that you can never know that you're attached to because you're always there because you're not attached to anything. Like that's why
so then I'm saying but then does that mean you're actually not attached to that thing because you're not
really?
No, I guess yeah.
It's like I think there are probably passages in the Bible about it, like Buddhist stuff about it, all that where the very last thing is kind of like you end up on this place where it's almost that another reason why the Buddha says it's like the most dangerous thing because you can get stuck there permanently.
Right.
If you don't have like that kind of almost insight to the fact that this could be a thing that's happening and are like ready for it, whatever it is. Yeah, it's just such a
it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. Hence those like even the most pure practices like Vasanam by Goenka is just like nothing except the experience of what is. There's no imaginings, but like there's all the variations still where if there's any sense of words or visualization or anything, even at that super, super deep level, it's so like there's no way that you can deliberately intend to not visualize something at those levels or whatever, like just light existing, anything like that. Like it has to be so you're purely experiencing and nothing else is happening. Like just purely experience, and then you end up there, and then you have to like just sit there for so long with that. And, yeah. Well, we started with a deep one.
Yeah.
That I don't think has any answer or anything.
And I don't know if anyone will understand it.
We're in dark mode.